Welcome to this edition of Rooster Crow's production series on videos for sustainable living. And today with us we'll have Doug Simons, who will be teaching you all sorts of alternatives to taking care of your teeth without ever going to a dentist. I've been using the techniques that you'll learn in this video for the last 2 years, cleaning my teeth, remineralizing cavities, and even healing an abscessed tooth. What Doug really has is very simple, very straightforward stuff that you can do in your backyard or on a small farm without needing to go anywhere to buy anything. Very effective techniques. Doug has been living primitively in and around the Gila Wilderness and throughout the Southwest. He studied and worked with many of the curanderos of that same area. He is a very gifted healer and a medicine man, a modern day medicine man. And his medicine and what he has to offer is very powerful. And he certainly fits into our mode of having things that are simple, easy to do, and effective. And so let Doug take you on this journey toward taking care of your teeth without ever going to a dentist.
Okay, well, thank you, Marjorie. What I'm going to share with you today on this video is ways of taking care of your teeth, learning how your teeth, their natural system for self-care, and how we enhance that, how to maintain the good quality of your teeth, how to bring low quality teeth back up to high quality, how to repair cavities, cracks, breaks, information on wisdom teeth, gum health, and information about root canals and some of the effects of things we need to be aware of with modern dentistry so that we can make great decisions. So to begin with, where we start is with the initial concept of understanding that your teeth are alive. Often we've imagined them to be more like a stone, that if they get a crack, they're broken. You need to fix them with glue or throw them away. That isn't the case. Like any other part of our body, the teeth have a system for healing themselves. So for example, if you cut yourself, and be it a large cut or a small, you're already very aware of what to do for it. You clean it and you hold it together and it heals, and you know this. Well, once you understand that your teeth also have an entire system for repairing themselves and maintaining their health. The tooth has a matrix that's made up of basically something similar to bone, which is then covered by calcium. And we have to maintain the quality of the inner parts of the teeth, and also nourish the body in a way that the calcium, the enamel maintains good quality or regenerates. And that's really the basis of good tooth care, is maintaining the quality of the teeth and then allowing the body's ability to make enamel to be in good shape. In alternative medicine, or actually holistic medicine, in herbalism and any of these other practices, that's how we work. We work with aiding the body to do what it already does. So what we begin with are the basics of tooth care. And initially one has to begin by looking at their teeth. This is a very important part of tooth care. We tend to relegate that to the dentist. But what we really need to do is develop the habit of examining our own teeth. And what's usually required for this is a nice quality light source, usually the sun, and a hand mirror, and perhaps a dental mirror. And remember that all tooth decay begins with the very tiniest spot. So the earlier we're able to detect it, the more quickly we're able to influence it. And we want to avoid the startling and somewhat unpleasant sensation of looking in our mouth and finding a big cavity. It's much better to be watching our teeth consistently, and if we notice something, then we're able to repair it. And the premise of this beginning state of taking care of your teeth is that the enamel of our teeth is a changing and growing layer. And probably most people have had the experience of their teeth feel weak, or their teeth feel very strong and you're not even thinking about it. Occasionally we go to bite into a carrot and you're wondering, wow, my teeth feel weak. This is all about the amount of silica that is in our enamel. And we want to keep that level of chi and nutrition high in our teeth so that they're always strong. When our teeth start to feel hot and cold, or we feel a sensation when we eat sugar or sweet foods, sugar being not the ideal food for us anyway, but any of the sweet foods that immediately give us a sensation of pain, that's an indication that the enamel is weak. And at that point, we do things to enhance the enamel of our teeth. The basis for maintaining good enamel is, it has a few aspects. One is always that we must have some sense of nutrition, because if our nutrition is really, really low, then our body's going to reflect that. So the basic premises of good nutrition will of course affect our teeth, and that's always going to be an aspect in our lives for good health. Always, always, always. After that, we then begin to give our bodies the substances that they need to make good, strong teeth. And my experience with tooth care began when I was in my early 20s, and I had a filling that was replaced on or was put on a chipped tooth. I've always had very good teeth and never had a decay cavity. When this filling fell out, I had it replaced several times, and I ended out with almost a third of my tooth missing, and began to realize when it fell out the last time that I wanted some other option. And that's the place where I began to understand how to facilitate the strength of my teeth. The main plant for maintaining good tooth health is this plant right here. This is a plant whose common name is horsetail, and it's a worldwide plant, very common, loves moist ground, and there's several species of horsetail that grow. This is the one we want. We always want this upright, non-branching species of horsetail. It's called, the Latin name, and Latin names always, there's always two components of a plant Latin name. And so the genus for this one is Equisetum, and then what becomes important is what species. And that species is high male. And those are valuable pieces of information, and what's most important is that you can identify the plant, and here it is, the upright version. There's other versions of this plant that have small branching at every one of these joints in the plant. That's another species of horsetail, and it won't be effective. They actually carry some slightly what could be called toxic components that give people a little bit of nausea and headaches. This species doesn't carry that, and this is the one that will effectively grow enamel on your teeth. So whenever we're whenever we're working with our teeth and we're aware of them and they feel weak, it's time to consume some horsetail. Horsetail is also a medicine we use to maintain good health. So somebody who has good quality teeth but is interested in keeping them in good shape, we also use the horsetail for that. And then as we get further along in our discussion of repairing damaged teeth, horsetail will also be involved. Horsetail is the plant that regenerates the enamel of our teeth, and it can happen very quickly. If someone has the experience that I just described of feeling their teeth are just a little weaker than they're accustomed to, horsetail, maybe somewhere between 10 and 30 days of consuming horsetail, will rejuvenate the strong feeling and the enamel. You can touch your teeth. Touch your teeth with your tongue, and you should feel a nice, heavy, thick sensation of enamel. When they're kind of a little almost thin and rough feeling, that's the time that indicates the enamel is weak and we need to use the horsetail. So for consuming horsetail, this is what the horsetail will look like once it's dry. So there's a number of things to discuss about the horsetail in general. First off, as you can see, it can be purchased in a nursery and planted anywhere. All horsetail really needs is a little bit of moisture. It likes moistness, and it can tolerate a lot of moisture. In the wild, in the wild where it grows, horsetail prefers the banks of rivers, the edges of marshes. It likes moisture. If you were to collect it in the wild, you have obligations to do it in a good way where you don't over-collect or damage the plants. But always remember that horsetail must come from a clean locality, because if there's agriculture, chemical agriculture around, horsetail is reputed to concentrate agricultural toxins. And of course, we don't want to be ingesting that. So horsetail has to be either grown or harvested in clean localities. Very easy plant to grow, and I really recommend that we propagate and promote this plant by growing it. Now, if you're going to collect it, remember that you always have to speak to these plants. They're living people just like us, and they require communication. This is kind of a forgotten part of being an herbalist, or I shouldn't say a forgotten part, but a diminished part of our relationship with the plant people. So if you're gathering any of these plants, and at some point you probably will, it's very important to remember to have good relationship with the plant people. And the way to do that is to always speak to them, ask their permission, perhaps give them an offering that facilitates the movement of energy between two people, and then ask for their guidance in how to collect, and then listen to it. We also use our knowledge, the way we already think. We have to know that we don't gather half or 2/3 of a stand of horsetail. We gather an eighth or less of a stand and leave the rest, remembering that we're only gathering the above ground parts of this plant. So it's a very sustainable plant to use. We gather the above ground parts, the next year it comes back. And if we propagate it, which is a fantastic idea, you also use these same systems of harvesting the plants that you propagate. So how do we consume the horsetail? Fresh, pop off a piece. They break it, each one of these nodes, and chew them up. They're moist, delicious, and you can chew them and eat them. Whenever you're around good quality horsetail, go ahead and eat some. But we're not always around it. So the thing to do is get the horsetail, bring it home, and dry it. Always get more than you think you might need, because it dries down a lot. And again, propagating it and harvesting it at your own place is the most superior way. Gather the horsetail, dry it down, and then we grind it. There's different ways of grinding it, but for an individual basis, the little electric coffee grinders that they work great, and it turns it into a powder like this. Now, good quality horsetail should look just like this. It should be green and vibrant and full of chi. It shouldn't look like a paper bag. It shouldn't be so old and dead that it has nothing left. We take this powder and we put it in a little bit of water and use about a heaping teaspoon of horsetail a day. Whenever you're using a plant, any of these plants that we're going to discuss today, we always gain a relationship with them a little bit in the beginning. That way we avoid any kind of startling results. Horsetail is a very, very useful and renowned and ancient plant that's been used forever. It's a safe plant, wonderful, wonderful medicine for humans to use. So take a heaping teaspoon, put it in a bit of water, and drink that. Don't use it as a tea. It won't be anywhere nearly as effective. And make sure you get enough. So you maybe, because it's your first time, you start with a little less, but within a day you're using about a heaping teaspoon a day. Children, less. They use half the adult dosage. 10 or more days of eating that horsetail will be enough for someone's teeth to be maintained very well. So say 6 to 10 days a month for anybody is awesome. Somebody who's experienced some tooth difficulty, maybe more. Horsetail loves to be, the body loves to ingest horsetail for a period of somewhere between 5 and 10 days, and then a few days taken off. And then when you take it again, it's more effective than steadily using it all the time. So you take it in little bursts, and it's a more effective medicine. Horsetail is basically the foundational plant of good tooth care because it has an affiliation with the mouth that allows the teeth and bones to be where they're supposed to be and in the strength that they need to be. In herbal medicine, horsetail has always been known as a bone medicine, a medicine that influences the kidneys, also the tendons. So the kidneys rule, in Chinese medicine they use a term, the kidneys rule different parts of our body. And that includes the bones, the teeth, the hair, the knees. There's various places. But horsetail is a kidney remedy. So you're also strengthening the quality of your kidneys, which in turn influences the teeth, and it has the direct influence of strengthening the bones of your jaw, the matrix of the teeth, the tendons that hold the teeth in place, and most especially the enamel layer on the teeth. Now this is a very moving and changing layer. Calcium is an incredibly important part of the human metabolism, and if our calcium levels get out of the parameters that they need to be in, many things happen to the body. It can affect the way the heart beats. Very important metabolic processes are dependent upon calcium. So there's lots of ways that the body makes sure it maintains itself in the right zone of calcium. And one of the ways, if we have a week of not eating correctly, or we have a bout of stomach flu or some other degenerative process or chronic disease, the body has many ways of obtaining calcium. And one of the ways is to remove the calcium from the teeth. Very quick place for calcium to be grabbed up by the body. The body is dependent on the fact that you will again eat well enough, and you'll get some more calcium. So many people get small cavities, and not having been to the dentist usually people go once a year or sometimes twice. In that 6 months or 12 months, lots of tiny cavities have appeared and disappeared. And when they're in the enamel layer, you never even know they're there. They come and go. And now if we add the horsetail to the way we maintain our teeth, now we have an ability to avoid having deeper cavities and keep our teeth very, very strong. So it's about a teaspoon, a heaping teaspoon of the powdered dried horsetail daily in bursts of 5 to 10 days for good monthly maintenance of our teeth. And then if we're having other tooth problems, we can ingest more of it to rebuild the density and strength of our teeth. Now, one thing I'd like to remind everybody initially is useful whether you decide that you don't want to see the dentist anymore or that you want to keep going to the dentist and use this as functional adjunct to whatever you're already satisfied with, or what you might already be doing. So it's not as if to experience the good effects of horsetail you have to never go to see a dental practitioner. That's not the point. But what we're offering here is things that can be used to enhance the quality of our teeth, maintain the quality of our teeth, and as you get more accustomed to this, then now you have a broader choice of whether you choose a therapy at the dentist or one of the therapies that I'm going to offer. So I really encourage everybody to begin by using the horsetail and these initial techniques of cleaning your teeth so that you begin to get empowered and understand more of how your teeth work. And then over time, you can decide how you want to use the additional information. And as I go along farther into this discussion, we'll be talking about healing deep cavities as well as abscesses, all kinds of things. So the next level here is another way of cleaning our teeth. And initially, I'd always heard that you could use a stick to clean your teeth, and it took me a while to understand how that worked. And now I do it, I have a very easy to understand system. You choose a dry stick. This happens to be a piece of willow, which is makes for a very, very effective tooth cleaning stick. A piece of any of these trees around here, a limb, a twig of oak, anything that's dry. Willow has the characteristic of breaking well. So if you take it like this and keep your fingers far apart like I did, not break it right there, but spread them out, you'll get a break that ends out being a chisel shape. And what we want the hardness of dead wood. And we take that chisel and we clean each tooth individually. So I'll begin with the front of this tooth. So now I've cleaned just the front of one tooth. Now if you think about it, there are 6 different surfaces to our teeth, or 3 per jaw. So there's the outside, the biting surface, and then the inside, and that's true of the bottom. The outside, the biting surface, and then the inside, and then of course the very ends of the back teeth. So 6 surfaces. And I definitely suggest that when you clean your teeth with a stick, that you do it systematically. You don't just randomly go here and there, because then you're not going to know if you actually got every single tooth. So I tend to do the outsides on both jaws, and then I do the top surface of both jaws, and then I do the inside of both jaws. You want a chisel shape for the outside, a more pointed shape to clean the biting surfaces, and then again usually a chisel shape for the inside. there's a good bit of pressure, not so much that you might slip and cut your gums, but you're not brushing them like a toothbrush very softly. You're literally scraping them. And don't ever do this with metal. We're doing it with this wood. And it won't damage the teeth at all, but it cleans them really thoroughly. And the first thing that you'll notice if you take the time to do this, well, a few things. One thing you'll notice is that the first time it takes you forever, and you can't imagine that you might continue to do it this way. But it does quickly become faster, and it's not necessary to do it every single day. You can work it around your toothbrush, but it's important to do it several times a week, and maybe every day if your teeth are a bit compromised and need some work. So you'll first notice that you're meeting your teeth for the first time. You'll be really surprised at all the different angles and points of your tooth that you never noticed before. And then, after you've cleaned them once, you will also notice that your teeth have never felt so clean, because you've literally scraped them, each one very, very clean. Now, teeth love pressure. Pressure strengthens the tooth. It enlivens it, it brings circulation, and the teeth love pressure. Imagine that in each tooth there are literally miles of tiny tubes. That's what makes up the inside of your tooth. Right behind the enamel, the matrix of the tooth, each tooth has literally miles of microscopic tubing. And in that flow fluids of the body. Many things can't get in there, but nutrition can. And it stimulates and strengthens the teeth to give them pressure. Pressure is a very important part of tooth health. So when scrubbing your teeth, you're not only cleaning them, you're invigorating them. And this is an important aspect of it. It's very important that we do more than just poke the food out from between our teeth. Where we have to pay the most attention is where our teeth come down to the gum line. There's a triangle of space. That's the place that we need to pay most attention to when cleaning between our teeth. And it's not enough to poke the food out. You need the right size toothpick that literally scrubs the area between the teeth. And that can be done by either using a commercially made toothpick and being sure you're scrubbing that triangle thoroughly, or you can use any twig, hard twig or stick that you made for cleaning. But that's part of cleaning your teeth and needs to be done. I have noticed that dental floss has been promoted for this use, but one of the problems with dental floss is it tends to irritate the gums. So when you snap down between the teeth and hit the gums, this over time tends to help cause recession and irritates the gums, cuts them a bit. This is a great alternative to that. So far we've discussed examining our teeth to watch for spots of decay, consuming horsetail, and cleaning them with a stick. Now these are really the critical bases for maintaining good tooth health. Now, if we're going to, in addition, use a toothbrush, at that point, then we need to consider most of the time using an herbal tooth powder as opposed to a toothpaste. There's several reasons for this. One, because the herbal tooth powders, if you make them correctly, and they're very easy to do, and I'll explain how to do this, they're designed for certain characteristics of the herbs. So in this particular powder that I make, it contains a very strong astringent herb, which means a plant that shrinks tissue. The very essence of astringency is that it's also antimicrobial. No bacteria can live in that very shrinking if you covered yourself in a very shrinking substance, you wouldn't be comfortable. So it doesn't. So the bacteria, astringency is antimicrobial just by its nature. Also into this tooth powder, there's I think 5 plants in here. It's about half astringency. For me, I use a plant called canagre or red dock, a very nice astringent plant. One could use the bark of white oak. It's not important really what astringent plant you use. The one that's nearby you is the one that works well. We then add antimicrobial plants such as creosote bush from the low desert, which is a very balancing herb for pH in your mouth. This powder will also balance the acidity and the alkalinness, balance the pH of your mouth. Very important for maintaining good gum and tooth health. So we have red dock, the astringent, chaparral, an antimicrobial and pH balancing plant, the dry pitches of pine, juniper, a little bit of a desert plant called yerba manza for its spiciness, and a little bit of California white sage. If you're going to use that herb though, make sure you don't put much in because the flavor is very strong and it's not necessary. So what we end out is finding plants that are astringent, antimicrobial, and stimulating. The astringency will tighten the gums, bring them back from their slight bogginess that they might have. If you use only astringency, you might cause them to begin to recede over time because there's not enough stimulation. So you put a stimulating herb in there to bring nice circulation to the gums. Then we have these strong antimicrobial and healing plants that maintain the good strong pH of our mouth. And when you scrub your mouth with this tooth powder, you can just use it on your toothbrush. You moisten your toothbrush and put the powder on. You walk away with a mouth that's very invigorated. One of the things that that was called to my attention fairly recently is that almost all toothpaste has glycerin in it. And one of the things that happens when we use the glycerin is it coats our teeth. And part of the magic of the re-strengthening of the enamel comes through the saliva. And so when there's this coating of glycerin on our teeth, the saliva is not as effective in remineralizing the enamel. We're always choosing in alternative medicines to be nudging ourselves toward better health. So when we find something out that the toothpaste may be interfering with the building of enamel, it's better not to use it or use it much less frequently and use something that we know is actually enhancing the health of our mouth and our teeth. Let's say you picked up this, you've been eating some horsetail, you've been cleaning your teeth, and you're now seeing that you have some either small or larger spots of decay. So let's begin with a very tiny one. You begin by just scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing that little tiny brown spot. It's true if it's a huge one. We use the same procedure. And what we're trying to do is remove the decay by scrubbing and using these strong antimicrobial pH balancing herbs in our mouth to stop that little process of decay that's begun. We're eating the horsetail, and now the enamel fills itself back in. We've succeeded. Now let's say we have a bigger cavity that we've discovered. Often we don't notice a cavity until it hurts. That's what we're trying to avoid by watching our teeth and knowing them, looking at them thoroughly on a weekly or at least weekly basis. Yeah, a week is great. Could be 10 days, could even be 2 weeks. But initially it needs to be fairly frequent so that you have a familiarity. You want to have a reference point. You want to be able to see that a week ago that wasn't there. If you only look at your teeth once every 4 months, you don't know how long something's been there, and you don't have a point of reference. The more frequently that we pay attention to the way our teeth look, the more we'll be able to detect change and know how long it's been there. So we're trying to avoid large changes in our tooth. But let's say we look and there's a larger hole, a larger cavity. Process is basically the same. We clean that hole with a stick, and be creative. If you need to take your knife and reshape the stick so that it's the correct shape to fit in a given cavity, do that. Create the shape that will fit into the place that you want, and push hard and clean. Use several shapes if necessary, and continue, throughout the day. Anytime you're getting around to it, clean that spot on your tooth. When you're not cleaning it, you take some of these antimicrobial herbs, perhaps this tooth powder or another strong antimicrobial plant, and pack that hole so that what we're working with is stopping the decay, so that now the enamel, which is like a coat of paint, enamel's like paint. If we stop the decay, there's now nothing in the way for the enamel to grow back over that surface. I've never been able to regrow the matrix of the tooth, but what we can do is coat the damaged tooth or the changed shape with the enamel, like a coat of paint. So we clean thoroughly, and we pack the hole with these strong plants until we stop the decay, at which point the enamel will grow back over, and now we have a changed shape in our mouth, but it's covered with enamel and stabilized. So the entire time that we're dealing, now we haven't gotten into a tooth that's painful. We've talked about a small decay, now a larger decay. So we clean it, we keep it packed with antimicrobial herbs, and of course we consume horsetail in order to strengthen the matrix of the tooth and give the body what it needs to build another layer of enamel. We go to the next level, which could be a really deep hole that is also painful. Same process. So long as we can touch it, we do it exactly the same, more diligently. The other thing to remember, whenever you notice a weakness on a tooth, whether it's a small decay or a larger one, remember that the rest of your teeth are probably vulnerable. So you want to be more careful to watch the rest of your teeth carefully, and take extra precautions using tooth powder, cleaning with a stick, and eating horsetail. Okay, so we have discussed basic maintenance of your teeth, how to keep them clean, how to use the horsetail, how to deal with small cavities, how to deal with larger cavities, and now we're going to talk about a deep cavity, one that hopefully you won't ever get because you're using these other techniques to pay attention and it never gets that far. So if the cavity is really deep and has turned into an infection or an abscess, now we have to add yet another layer of repair to the teeth. This requires the same techniques that we used, where we are going to clean the teeth, we're going to pack the sore tooth with these powerful herbs, we're going to eat the horsetail, we're going to watch the rest of our teeth so that no other decay is happening during this time of weakness, and we're going to add elements depending on how bad the tooth is. So let's jump to the place where you have an infected, abscessing tooth. This is a acute condition and definitely requires a lot of attention, and is also going to take some time. Not necessarily a long period of time, but a lot of time during a short period. And abscess teeth are kind of they can be painful and quick acting, but we've had a number of great successes of treating abscess teeth. It's not really a lot different than treating an infection somewhere else in the body. So what we need to do is poultice that abscess tooth and ingest internally the types of medicines that we normally take during an infected time. These medicines are things like red root, ceanothus, which cleans and tonifies the lymphatic system so that the cleaning system of the body is working well. We also use strong immunostimulants that stimulate the immune system to work harder and nourish the immune system. They don't just stimulate it, they give the immune system nourishment. We'll also do things like make sure that our diet is a little bit or maybe a lot more careful. Of course, you won't be eating terrible quality foods, sugars, refined sugars in quantity or really any of them for a little while. More things like green drinks and green powders, things that give the body nice strength to ward off this infection. And it's important to know that if you're using something, an herb, something that most people are familiar with, something like echinacea, if you take 2 or 3 dropperfuls a day, that's not going to do it. You need some good quality echinacea root, and you'll be taking, strong echinacea root tea in large quantities for several days. Lots of well brewed red root tea for lots of days. We'll also use other herbs, maybe raw garlic being very, very powerful medicine for times of infection. Garlic needs to be peeled, smashed, and allowed to oxygenate for a little while. Not really a long time, a few minutes. This prepares a substance called allicin in the garlic to be more effective and helps fighting the infection. You'll smell like garlic because you need to eat a lot. There's many options, but the consumed herbs are very important. Keeping the tooth clean, keeping the mouth clean, using tooth powder, make it into a mouthwash and swish with it. Also clean the rest of your teeth with it. And then finally, we'll be poulticing. A poultice is a compress of herbs used to draw out the infection. There are many plants that are used for poulticing, and we'll go over just a couple right now. Clay is also a very effective drawing poultice, and if one has a noticeable abscess, it's going to be required to poultice it. That will, all these other things, you may be able to stop that tooth infection with these other methods that I've spoken of, ingesting plants and using the tooth powders and keeping it packed. But the next and very important part is to poultice. And it'll be the one that you'll notice right away is the one that really turns the corner for you. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to make a clay poultice. It's very simple. This is clay that you can find clay in nature all the time. It'll be, you can dry it out and powder it and use it, or just purchase clay and available at health food stores, whatever. This is some good quality clay that I harvested around where I live, and it's powdered. Once clay is very dry, it's easy to powder up. You get it into a powder form. Common substance, easy thing for people to come across. Then we add a bit of water. Now, we're being careful not to get this clay too wet. And what we want to do, now this, for a clay poultice, there's two very universal and important things about making a poultice out of anything, no matter where one might be using it on their body. And the two concepts that are critical about a poultice are that the poultice has to be large, much bigger than the area that you're trying to change. And it has to stay on for a long period. If you throw a little spot of clay where the sore tooth is and leave it on for 20 minutes, nothing will happen. But a large poultice, and see how I've allowed this to sit for a moment or two. This is a fairly decent texture for the kind of poultice that I'm making. Now, we take this and perhaps have made a lot more of it, and you get to take it and then smear it on the outside, on the infected area. So if I had a tooth abscess right here, I would take this clay and put a layer of it on my face, right across here. Let's say the tooth is right here. I'd make a thick layer of clay so that it didn't fall off, that covered this entire section of my face. You can allow it to taper off and cover the area around the ear and down the side of the neck, because these are often partially indicated in the whole problem. And you get a nice heavy layer, about close to an inch thick. And if the consistency of the clay is good, that's fine. Now you can put this on and lay down and crash out, go to sleep. Good long poultices, so long as you're not in an emergency situation that your tooth is needing attention immediately, they're best done at night because you're not having to worry about them. The clay will stay on all night and dry up, and then you take it off in the morning. Initially, you want to take a very hot, moist towel. So take a towel, pour boiling water or immerse it in boiling water or very hot tap water, bring it out, hang it for a moment, wring it out, put that on top of the clay, and then a nice dry towel on top of that. Infection is always attracted to heat, so the heat in a clay poultice is very, very useful. And you can keep replacing that hot towel. The infection, the pain of the infection will diminish with heat. Heat helps a lot. The clay can also be used inside. You can take maybe just a little thicker consistency, but something about like this, and put it inside the mouth, right where the infection is. So fill this entire cavity with clay, so long as it's thick enough that it doesn't just dissolve and you swallow it instantly. Eating a little clay is never a problem. Ingested clay is used all the time for helping absorb toxins. It's not a problem to ingest some clay. So that's how to use clay externally and internally for a tooth infection. And often we really need to use the clay outside like that and make sure it's thick and big and covering all the way down the side of the neck. Now, very effective and useful poultice. Next, I want to show you yet another and perhaps the most useful poultice of them all. And we're not going to talk about today, in this situation, all of the uses of a poultice. We're focusing on tooth infections using a poultice. So there's two ways to use a prickly pear pad. This is the leaf of a prickly pear. It comes covered in spines, and we remove those using a large rock, something maybe the size of this paper bag, and we grind those those thorns off. Usually I choose to do it while it's still on the plant, and I'll use another rock or a stick to brace the pad. I'll grind the thorns off carefully all over, get it mostly clean, cut it from the plant, lay it on the ground, and take every last thorn off. I can touch this thing anywhere. It may take you 10 or 15 minutes the first time you've ever done it, but by the time you've done 4 or 5, you'll cut the time in half. Usually takes me about 4 or 5 minutes to 3 to 5 minutes, really, to gather a prickly pear pad. And it's a great thing to know because most people live where prickly pear is. It's a very common plant, and it's represented in all the states of the Union of the United States. It's all over the world. And in most states, it's fairly abundant. And of course, where we live in the Southwest, it's a very abundant plant. So once you have a prickly pear pad in your possession, there's two ways to use it for an abscessed tooth. Whenever your tooth gets sore, you may want to poultice it a bit anyway, because prickly pear is so soothing, even if there isn't an abscess that's already started. So I'll take a chunk of the prickly pear, cut the skin off. I'm sizing it right now. Remove the skin on one side. Now this slice, if there's any pokey things, you often want to remove them. If the skin is a little pokey. Now this little chunk can be slipped inside the mouth. Looks like that. That'll sit in there and draw. Now, if the tooth is very, very sore, you might not even be able to do that. It's an outside poultice initially. Once things have tapered off a little, or if they haven't gotten very bad yet, this system works very, very well. Now, to demonstrate how to make an effective outside poultice with the prickly pear, you take this pad that we've now gotten the thorns off and split it in half. And this is done by just running your knife right around the outside edge. So if you notice, I've only gone just a little ways in. Now I can take my fingers, go in between, and split it right in half. Okay, now we have these two halves of the prickly pear. The easiest way to get the gel off is by just softening it or loosening it a little bit with something like a fork. So I go across the prickly pear. Now let me show you what the anatomy of a prickly pear pad is. It has skin, some of this gel-like flesh, which we'll scrape off. So it has skin, gel, a fibrous layer, gel, and then it's repeated. Fibrous, gel, skin. You'll see as we start to take it apart. Now we want all of this gel. So we loosen it a bit with the fork. Remove it here. Now a knife will work fine, a stone works, just about anything. But a knife and a spoon and fork work really well. Okay, so there's a little bit of gel. Most of the inner gel was on that side. Now I take it and snap it, break the skin. Sometimes you have to cut it if it's a pretty liquidy pad. Okay, so I've broken the skin, and now I'm going to see if now I'm going to pop pull some of this fiber out. And the prickly pears, they vary by the amount of moisture, and if they're a little dry, it's helpful to soak them once you've gathered them. Okay, now you're seeing this fiber come out. Okay, so there's the beautiful piece of prickly pear coral that comes out, and we're not going to use that. We're getting that fiber out of the way. And remember that any prickly pear will work, even the little ones. So if you live in an area that has only has small prickly pears, that's fine. You just have to use a few more pads. So now I take the fork, soften this up a bit. Take the spoon. And we'll end out with several large pads or I mean several smaller pads or one large pad. You'll end out with a good sized pile of gel, and that'll be enough for making one poultice sufficient to help cover the one sick tooth for one poulticing. A prickly pear poultice is good for about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, and then it needs to be replaced, and you need another pad. So you've got to work a bit at gaining a friendship with these prickly pears. And once you've learned how to get the thorns out, gone through the processing once or twice, they're really not that hard to use, and they're worth the effort because how effective they are. Okay, so what we're going to do is take this small amount so that I can demonstrate to you. Now you can see it's very sticky. It stuck to my skin, but it would probably fit to my face really well. But for this prickly pear to be really effective, you need to add a little bit of liquid to it. So here's some water. And a poultice can be enhanced a bit by using a strong medicinal tea, something like chaparral or another strong antimicrobial herb. You don't want to ever use a hot tea because you don't want to cook the cactus. But you can even make them stronger, clay as well, by using a strong medicinal tea in that as a moistening agent. So you're noticing it's getting a little sloppier. It's going to go past jello. It's going to be like really wet jello. So notice that kind of sloppy texture it's getting. That's what we want. Now, to poultice a tooth, take a piece of cloth, put this prepared gel onto the cloth. Now this thing will be taken, put right against the face like that, and then wrapped on with either an ace bandage or strips of sheet. You take it and wrap it around the head, around the neck, and you get to look like an old-timey photograph of somebody with a toothache. And that's how it works. Put it on like that, wrap it on. It sounds like it's awkward. Ace bandages, of course, have that bit of elasticity to them, and they hold it on very, very well. You need to keep it on, so if it's an acute condition, then it's done immediately and maybe all day and all night. If it's not yet to an acute state where you're too uncomfortable, you can do it night after night. It'll usually take about something like three to 5 applications to actually pull the infection out. And if it takes a few more, do a few more. At times when it's not too bad, you might only have to do 2 to 3. So what we've talked about for these bad infections is or a advanced tooth that's now gotten to the point where it's abscessing. We poultice, we ingest the powerful plants that aid the body in dealing with infection. We keep the mouth clean using some kind of tooth powder that I've described, using it several times a day. And as soon as we can get near that tooth, we begin to scrub it and fill it full of the tooth powder or other strong herbs, which I'll demonstrate to you in a moment. You keep that tooth always packed, always scrubbed. If you're not packing it, if you're not scrubbing and cleaning the tooth, then you're keeping it packed with the powerful plants. Ingesting plenty of horsetail in order for the matrix of the tooth and the enamel to grow back over that damaged surface. And in the end, you'll have a stabilized tooth that has an enamel coating over the hole. Now this hole will still require you to clean it out and not allow it to have food rotting inside the hole, but you have a stabilized tooth. So that's how to deal with a severe cavity, and hopefully your process will have avoided that being an experience that people have. Now we want to talk about some of these plants. Chaparral, as you can see, those of you who are from the Southwest know this as creosote bush, or in Mexico it's known as Hediondilla, la gobernadora. Larea is the Latin name, and this is a great plant for chewing and packing into cavitied teeth. Very, very good plant. For those of you who live in the forested areas, this is a lichen called Usnea, and again, this is also a great plant for packing sore teeth. One thing I want to say to everybody is remember that identification is important. You either buy these from an herbalist that you know knows how to identify these plants, or you learn how to identify them yourself thoroughly. I want to also share another plant that is available from seed companies. If you pay attention to some of the seed catalogs, you can buy and grow this plant. This is a dried form of a plant called Spilanthes, or South American toothache herb. And it's very numbing plant. So you can chew it and it will numb the area that's irritating. It has other aspects where it's a good immunostimulant as well, and it helps heal damaged teeth. So use it for pain, but also use it for enhancing the body's reaction to a decaying tooth. So this plant is really fun to grow and it's super easy. It's a perennial where it comes from in South America, but here you get the seeds. They're very tiny. Make sure that they don't get dry when you grow them because they're so small. And once they're up, it's a very hardy plant and something that is worth having around. Think about the normal process of a cavity when you go to the dentist. They're going to find the cavity, going to drill it out, and then going to fill it with a filling. The next thing that will happen is over time, somewhere between a very short period of time and really kind of on the extreme, 20 years, that filling will fall out. And it's usually somewhere between 4 and 10 years. I'd say the average is really around 7 years that a filling will last in the mouth. They don't normally last really long periods. So when that filling pops out and you return to the dentist, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to grind the hole clean and refill it. Now, if this goes on, say you're in your, this begins in your 20s, by the time you're 35, that tooth, there's not really much left. And you're faced with the next dental option, which could be a root canal or a crown or other things. So there's additional incentive to find ways to avoid getting large cavities that have to be filled, and then in the end having very little tooth left to do anything with. So what we try to do is avoid, which is what all dental cleansing or practice is about, is trying to avoid cavities. But we have a system that might even be more effective. That's what we're promoting here, is a way that you can clean your teeth without with more effectiveness, and to keep the enamel and the strength of teeth up so that we avoid cavities. The next thing we'll talk about for a moment is root canals. I think it's very important that that everybody knows as much as they can, so that making a good decision is more possible. Okay, the premise of a root canal is that the tooth itself is completely sterile, so that nothing that it gets trapped in by the root canal can cause any further problems. There's a man who was the head of dentistry in the 30s, Dr. Weston Price, who spent over 20 years examining root canals in order to understand how they worked and what their problems might be. And this is very helpful information if you're faced with the decision of making a root canal. What he showed can happen is there's a bacteria that lives in our mouth, a strep family bacteria, that when it gets trapped in the tooth where there's no oxygen, when it lives in your mouth, it's anaerobic. It lives on oxygen. But when it gets into the tooth, there is no oxygen, and it becomes a life force form that doesn't need oxygen. Well, then its metabolic process, its waste, becomes extremely toxic. The matrix of the tooth, these miles of tubing that I discussed before, they're too small for the immune system to enter. So that bacteria still has nutrients entering through those tubes, but it doesn't have any, but the immune system is not able to enter there and move that bacteria out. So the metabolic process of that bacteria, its waste product, is extremely toxic. And what Dr. Price would do was he would have these patients that had some chronic disease, and it can be just about anything. It can be heart problems, chronic congestive heart failure, chronic fatigue, cancer, any kind of degenerative nerve problems, muscle problems, almost any chronic disease state. And what he would do was he'd recognize that this person had this problem. He'd pop the tooth out of their mouth and put it under the skin of a rabbit. And this rabbit would die of the same disease that this person had. So what this tells us is that there are many people that have root canals and maybe are not overtly noticing problems, or so far not having problems. But the suggestion is it can make us vulnerable to a very dangerous situation. And it also, by knowing this, it alerts people who have root canals to pay attention to what imbalances they may be experiencing that could be attributed to their root canal. And if they're having these kind of problems, now they have a direction to go. And unfortunately, we haven't really come up with a viable cure for a problem root canal except to have them pulled. And it's important to, what I'm inviting people to do is get empowered, get the information so that you can make a better choice of whether you would rather have a root canal or maybe to lose the tooth. And Dr. Price's information is available in his books. He was around in the 30s. It's a long time ago, but his information is very valid, has been validated again and again. By some people it's considered controversial, but if you pay attention to it, make your own decisions, and read some of the compelling information, then you'll be able to make a better decision on whether you want a root canal, or perhaps if you have one and it's deteriorating your health, you might be thankful to know that this is a contributing factor. One of the sources is a book called Root Canal Cover-Up by a Dr. George Mining, and there's also Dr. Price's work, which is available. Look it up on the internet, and you can start to find information about this. We've been aware of this. I have been aware of this for close to 20 years, and it's not always an easy thing for someone to go, oh wow, my root canal could be causing this long-term chronic problem that I'm having, and to decide to pull it out. But a number of people have, you can read about it, or my personal acquaintances who have pulled their teeth and had changes in their life that they attributed very much to those root canals. So this is important information to have, so that you can determine whether a root canal is an appropriate thing. None of us want to lose our teeth, but if they're going to cause, the procedure is going to cause a really debilitating chronic problem, of course we wouldn't want that. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk about for a moment is fluoride. And it's been suggested that fluoride enhances the quality of our teeth, helps us from getting cavities. What I have to share about this is fairly simple, and it's about understanding context and where this information comes from, so that we can make good decisions on whether this fluoride is actually helpful. Fluoride is not just one molecular structure. There are fluoride salts, and there's a number of them. There have been studies that have been done, and studies are studies, so whatever, that have suggested that fluoride might be helpful for the teeth. What's important to know about that is that that was a naturally occurring fluoride salt. And that, when we move from that particular molecular structure to the structure of the fluoride that is being put into toothpaste, and especially into our water source, they're different fluorides, and they are not proven to have these positive effects. Now, I'm not hugely convinced that any of these fluorides are necessarily very effective for helping our teeth, and that, compared to some of the things we've discussed here. But what we don't want is something that's detrimental. If something is slightly helpful or helpful, that's great. But what we don't want is something that is detracting from our health. And what's important to know is the fluoride that's being put into water sources is a completely different fluoride, and it's actually a byproduct of refining aluminum. And before it was offered as something to put into drinking water, they didn't even know what to do with it. It was considered a toxic waste and a problem. And then they discovered the fluoride maybe having a positive effect, and they chose to use this other kind of fluoride in the water. Now, the thing that's maybe not good about that is that this type of fluoride that we're talking about that they're putting into the water from aluminum refining is also shown to have many other detrimental health effects. Things that affect children's growth, about affecting the way the brain works, a number of things that nobody really wants. So to make a good decision about what kind of fluoride you'd like to have in your water, we need to know more about the sources of it, how it works, and it's probably maybe not that interesting a subject as to how well it works for us anyway. But what's important is how that particular fluoride is not helpful for anyone, at least according to the information that's available now. And when making a choice on toothpaste, this same kind of information might be valuable in that it's not really going to necessarily have a positive effect on our teeth. Now we'll go back over what we've covered very briefly, and you have a nice, elegant way of dealing with your teeth. So maintain your teeth. The way we do this is by watching them closely, so we know what changes and how they look. By cleaning them in the ways that we described with the sticks, by using, of course, horsetail to maintain our teeth. Then if we have tooth deterioration, we do the steps of using horsetail, cleaning, and using these powerful herbs. And we take it all the way to the point where we have an infected tooth that might need that we need poulticing and ingesting the useful herbs, keeping our mouth clean, balancing our pH using these tooth powders, having the awareness of how pH affects both our tooth health and our gum health. And that's a whole lot of it. So there we go.
Well, I'd like to express my appreciation for Doug Simons for sharing the information he has. I'm sure you'll agree after having gone through it that this is very unique and unusual, and I'll again offer my testimony that it's highly effective. One other thing that often comes up is teeth grinding. And we found that the information offered by an author named Pt.1 with a book called Pain Free has very simple techniques for helping to realign your body and relieve the muscular tension that causes teeth grinding. I have also found that technique to be very effective, and I actually learned about this technique from some students at Doug's seminars and through their testimonials. I believe this is very effective information. I'd also like to introduce some other subjects on the basis of nutrition. Nutrition and diet is obviously very important to this. All this information is underlying the basis for what Doug presents. Sally Fallon has taken the work of Dr. Weston Price and made a cookbook that makes getting the highest level of nutrition that you need easily accessible to those of us living in the modern world. And I'd highly recommend her book, Nourishing Traditions, for more information on how to implement getting much higher quality and better quality food into your diet. So thank you for watching the video, and we look forward to seeing you again with another one of Rooster Crow's productions.